Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome from Germany, Christof, Mothering and Nurturing as the Key to Humanity's Future.
Well, thank you very much for this kind introduction. I almost miss a little bit standing up here because it makes me feel like a sun radiating out to everybody, but yeah, so I'll stay out here. Well, I just landed here, and as you might realize, I haven't actually landed yet here because I just came out of the car. And it's I'm taken and overwhelmed by a beautiful setting, and it's I feel very, very grateful of having the opportunity to talk here. So my main subject, and I share that with my co-speaker today, Jan, is the importance of our beginning. And what we see nowadays on our planet are challenges that we never had before. But on the other hand, we have a deep wisdom of how we can actually change things. And since the 1960s, science has actually caught up with common sense in order to transmit the information that has been known for since the beginning. And when watching my animals, starting from the beginning, I have to question what we're doing in our times. But when I was looking outside the window of my airplane, when landing in Lisbon, I was just talking to Elizabeth about that. I saw how defragmented our planet has become and how humans have started to take over many areas of nature. And it almost felt like a cancer growth, watching what we have done to our planet. And I think the keys to solve these problems, as I implying in the title, are originated in the beginnings. So we have challenges in our days now, in our times, from polluted air, from challenges with our water supplies, with our earth. And I just had a conversation about that at my little place, we live in the middle of the woods. I'm not even allowed to use the water that comes from the rain because it pollutes our vegetables. I'm not allowed to use the wood anymore and burn it because it's so contaminated with heavy metals. And the soil, we have our own source. We get our own water. I'm not able to use without filtration because the nitrates that have been put in there for almost 50 years are still poisoning our earth. So there I am in the middle of nature with my children and my animals, and I can't feed myself amongst the official guidelines with what I have. And the sad thing is that it is actually worrying because the main part of our clinic is to take all these substances out of our bodies, and we clean people of it and get rid of allergies, autoimmune diseases, cancers, etc. So we live in very challenging times with the environment that we have created. And I believe that the key to all our challenges that we have now are embedded in two very basic emotions. They're basically in love and empathy. If we have a little bit more love for ourselves, it would get rid of already a lot of problems that we face amongst humanity. But if we have a little bit more love for our fellow human beings, and we have more love for our nature that surrounds us, we would be able to cure this planet. And that's my hope, that one day we'll be able to do that. And the origins of love are rooted very, very deeply. I had a very interesting conversation in the shuttle that took us here. And it was all these people talking about the different therapies and the different insights they had into life. But basically, when it came down to where they came from, you could already find their biggest wounds. And unfortunately, in our times, we're still very much in a Freudian system in which basically everything that becomes before 3, that's for him was the foundation of consciousness in us, is not looked at. If you take children with ADHD, if you take children with autism, and nobody will ever even ask, how was birth, how was pregnancy, or how were the first few weeks? And if somebody now comes into our clinic with a psychological problem or with deep-rooted chronic diseases, that's the first thing we ask them, where do you actually come from? And when then two key sentences occur, then we know that there has been a problem. And that's when after birth, you have these babies that are very, very agitated and very, very nervous. And it takes them months to really calm down. Or you have those babies that are extremely calm, very, very calm, considering the circumstances that they had. And the first encounter that we have with stress, we now know through psychology, it's like going for the first time in a room and making a very emotional encounter in the room. You will always react going into this room with the same emotional context. And this is basically what happens to us if we're faced with the first stressor in life, birth. We come into this earth much, much earlier than that, but we only look then at the circumstances of birth. But basically, for 90% of the babies nowadays, it's a trauma. And that's how we will always react later on in life to stressors that occur. And probably everybody in here, when reflecting about, on their own situation, everybody will know whether it's a partner or somebody in the family that will become very, very agitated under stress, or somebody who's really like completely paralyzed and doesn't move. And the roots for these two mechanisms in order to deal with stress are in our origins. So the origins of love basically already start at conception. And I would love to talk about that even more, but I have very limited time. And it goes on through pregnancy. It goes on during birth at a very sensitive window around birth. And it goes on at the time after birth. So nowadays, as I said, we have the possibility to actually prove emotions scientifically, which is already a little bit ridiculous that we have to do so. But we live in times, and I call it, we have to be bilingual. We have to know the language of the heart, and we have to know the language of the mind. And if we combine these two, we will be able to change our planet. And the equivalent for love is oxytocin. Yeah? Most of you have already heard it, but there's an enormous amount of research on it at the moment. I wrote a few papers about it, and especially about the fact that we use a psychoactive substance in almost 80% of the births nowadays to induce labors with enormous consequences for the psyche of our fellow human beings in the future. But that's another subject. But this is love. I like this picture. Yeah? In case you have never identified yourself with love, this is love. Yeah? It's a nonapeptide in the posterior pituitary, and actually it's an equivalent of our capacity to have compassion, to have binding capacity, to have understanding, and to have fulfilled relationships. And you can use it nowadays in therapies, like I said, for autistic children that you can get out of their symptoms. You can use it for gut problems. You can use it, latest research, for heart problems. Basically, it says you inject this substance or you spray it into your nose, and basically what your body is responding to is love. I believe there are other ways that you could introduce love into medicine, but that's the way it goes at the moment. And in case you don't feel enough love, you can buy it nowadays on the internet. Yeah? Liquid Trust, you can buy love, it's great. Yeah? And Liquid Trust is a little spray. I don't actually recommend you to buy it, but it costs $40, and it's a set of two things. The first thing is a nasal spray. So in case you should be dancing tonight and somebody's fancying you, and you don't really fancy him, but he's or her, and she's got a little spray in her hand, or him, then be cautious, because it's absolutely odorless, and you inhale it, and your body will react as if you fall in love with that other person in front of you. So you go in your tent, have a great time, and enjoy the night, but actually your body was a little bit fooled into your emotion. But the great thing is with Liquid Trust, what you can buy, it's not a joke for $40, is you get an oxytocin inhibitor with it. So this is the great thing. You had a great night, and then you inject oxytocin inhibitor in your system, and you have no emotional bond to that person whatsoever. So no guilt, no sadness that you'd never meet that person again. It's a terrible thing, but you can buy it now everywhere. Yeah? $40. Yeah? So, and all I want to bring home are a few words for you to remember. And the one is genetic imprinting. I was just talking with you about it. And the another one is hormonal imprinting. The other one is bonding and body contact. Very, very simple terms. But as we know now in studies, change our lives. So starting with conception. At conception, we have nowadays lots of possibilities because we polluted our world so much. Yeah, infertility is one of the main points, even in our clinic. Yeah, not just for males, but for females. Sperms count. You use a mobile phone 30 minutes a day. You have a good chance to reduce sperm count to almost a contraceptive. Yeah, 30 minutes a day. There are 200 studies proving that you get all kinds of damages to the DNA of the sperms. They're very easy to extract, so that's just one of them. Heavy metals and also a lot of plastics that are estrogen have a huge effect, and sometimes that's all you have to do. Limit the amount of wireless, get a little bit of plastic bottles out of your life, and then the next generation is almost there. So, but why I'm saying this, that it already starts with conception, is that still nowadays in our times, 80% of all babies are not wanted. That's an enormous amount. Yeah? That's the majority of children on our planet. And if we think about it, what it causes on the conscious field of our planet, 80% not actually being wanted. And you will always find that in the psyche of these people, that they always have the longing to be somewhere else. Professor of me, a good friend, he told this. He talked about a beautiful concept that basically it's like wanting to attach back to the eternal source. Yeah, and as the amount of artificial inseminations now is increasing, we also have new ways to get information on the first cell, because we've known that consciousness and memory is not bound to any neural cell. I mean, we've done this with animals. We cut out one piece of their brain after the next one, and we had so-called volunteers on the death row that were cut from whom they cut out pieces of their brains in order to know where memory or consciousness is localized. And basically what they found is there's no such thing. Memory is happening on a quantum level and is not due to any neurological wiring in our brain. So basically we have consciousness in every cell. So when you have the chance to look in the internet on artificial insemination, especially on the ICSI ones, so intracytoplasmatic sperm injections, and you can see it literally is a painful experience to know that a sperm is chosen and then injected into the cell. You can feel the pain of that particular cell when this is done. Some prenatal psychologists talk about the first violation to the cell. Yeah? And in regression therapies, we go into that. We go much further also into sperm and ovum, but you can't talk to many people about this, but it's very, very interesting. But especially as conception, there's a huge imprint on that first unification between male and female information of the parents. When then the actual soul or the consciousness enters the cell, that's another matter, but basically it already exists at exactly that moment. So the ideal, and I mean, I have 3 children. I can't say that, yeah, the conscious decision was that created 2 of them, but at least 1, but I love all of them. But in the ideal world, we have a conscious conception for all of them, so we can, from the first minute, surround them with love. So that's basically the key to that, Jan. Look for a detoxification before you even want to get pregnant, and look for a conscious possibility to unite in order to create the next generation. Yeah? And if it doesn't happen that way, be aware that the cell is already absorbing any information that you take on. So sometimes in regression therapy we see is that at the time when the mother becomes conscious of the baby, there's a huge shock embedded in the cells. So just try to disconnect your fear, your anger, your guilt, or your negative emotions from the ones from the child, and just connect very early on with love, and basically say, this is your mom having trouble, in this world, but you are here and you're wanted. And you can literally see the blooming when doing this in regression therapies in people. It's a very beautiful experience. So the main thing is here in pregnancy as the next stage, it's called genetic imprinting. We know that a few years ago we were great believers in the genome, but the genome project was finished and we found out that we don't actually differ that much from some insects and some other mammals. So that obviously wasn't the entire story. But what you can do nowadays, you can find out that, and every year it's getting more and more. I was talking last year to Bruce Lipton about this, and at that time it was around 5,000 different criteria per cell that can turn off or turn on particular genes. That's called epigenetics. And I don't want to run into this because it's very popular at the moment, but it's so important that basically it's not the genes, it's the surrounding, it's the environment we create for every cell that decides on the future of that cell. So therefore, nutrition and detoxification is a huge issue. I mean, every day I'm getting new studies about electromagnetic radiation and the influence on the fetus. We're talking about neurological diseases. We talk about an hour of Wi-Fi a day, reducing the size of the cerebellum, not an unimportant part of our brain, in rats' fetuses by half. We're talking about kidneys, about half an hour of mobile phone, 90 megahertz, 900 megahertz per day, reducing kidney size by half. So every day there are new studies out, and I'm quite glad to see, Elizabeth already told me that not too many mobile phones are turned on. Just be very, very careful. We just tried to make a movie out of it, and it got boycotted by the industry. But that's another story as well. So basically, for all patients that come to our clinic, apart from their prenatal story, is nutrition. So these are the main concepts of it. Just include as much greens and as much fresh aspects as you can. Avoid white flour and sugar. Add green smoothies. I heard, I haven't seen them yet, that they're offered here. The greens are full of oxygen and are basically what our most related animals are eating. So just get into that and it fills you with really good vitality. Avoid milk if it's not fresh milk, but homogenized and pasteurized milk. Don't especially use it in pregnancy because it will raise the allergy amount by up to 200%. Limit animal proteins. That has many, many levels why you should do that, and get in the right fats. So in pregnancy, you can have all kinds of signs of problems that point in the direction of nutrition. You have already and diabetes, and that has become so common now, and is basically only due to white flour and sugar. If we reduce it with our patients, that's it. You don't have to do much more, but almost 3/4 of the patients that come to us are at one stage or next stage diagnosed with this in pregnancy. In Germany, we have around triple the amount of different tests during pregnancy than we do, for example, have in Holland. And therefore, it's very, very likely that you find a positive result with something. Some is relevant, but some is actually not relevant at all. So we have in Germany now a rate of 65% of pregnancy being a risk pregnancy because of over-identification of problems. And you can imagine what that means for the baby inside growing in an environment where the mother is called a risk mother. So the solution here, as we said, is a conscious contact from the beginning. Avoid the toxins and e-smoke. I could go on for ages about that. Good nutrition. And nowadays, it's a sad thing. Most people don't get enough nutrients anymore. You can't do it without supplementation. I was very much against this, but it's a fact. The soils are depleted. And even if you eat 100% organic, it can become very problematic. So birth, we have interventions that cause actual physical pain. I'm not saying that I'm actually against this because sometimes it's necessary, but I do believe from what all the birth stories and thousands of babies that we've seen in our clinic, that most of these interventions could be avoided if you just would follow a few strict guidelines of how to approach birth in a conscious way. But a ventouse, so a vacuum suction, will not only cause a traction on the head, but with the entire central nervous system. So you can imagine that's a huge pull on the entire system, and it has effect on all levels of that being psychological, neurological, and physiological. So we need to treat that. Forceps, we need to treat that as well. And a C-section, there are huge differences in the amount, in the kind of C-sections that you get with the implications for the children later on. And the worst ones we see are actually the planned ones where the baby is not ready yet to come. So one thing that we certainly always recommend is be careful, wait for the first labor activity in your system, and therefore you can go you can be at least secure that the baby has the right timing and knows when it wants to come out. So birth, that's another big thing that we're seeing at the moment. We have around, in Germany, almost 90% of all births are associated with some sort of medication. And what hasn't been done in research, and I looked through Medline and PubMed of the last 30 years, there are no studies actually investigating the dosage for an adult on a baby. So all these medications are given during birth, if it's labor enhancing or a tocolytic medication or pain medication, in the dosage for an adult, but has a huge imprint on the child. And somebody who has done lots of research about this is Professor Xaba from Hungary, and I can only recommend you to look into that and to become more conscious about even using so-called over-the-counter medication during the birth process, because there's a sensitive window in that time that leaves imprints for the rest of our lives. What we do, if we have medications, as I said, the majority of babies have them, we use dilutions. So we just make dilutions of every single medication and then see the reactions. And we even see reactions in adults when addressing the dilutions of the birth medications, especially, as I talked beforehand about oxytocin, that's used in the majority of births nowadays and has in rats, the same effect that normal hormones have in high levels. It reduces the amount of receptors. So that's a normal reaction of the body. If you have high amounts of some hormones, it starts to reduce the receptors. That's what happens in diabetes. But because it's this sensitive window around birth, it's there lifelong. And that's the sad thing. So you get a psychoactive substance during birth, but it downregulates all your receptors. So basically, when you have later on love in your life, you don't, and even if oxytocin is flowing around, you have nothing to attach it to. So, like I said, if the majority of births are happening like that, the majority of people will have problems with experiencing love in one or the other way. So that's basically a summary of the birth, how it should be. Take a calm place. I think you might be talking about this as well. And just leave it mostly up to the mother. Use the father to create a shield around the birthing place, and then only interact if something is really necessary. So here again, for the time after birth, we have a whole load of substances that are being put on the children nowadays, and vitamin K is one that you should always spread over for a few months and not use in mega doses. The same to vitamin D. Fluoride is sometimes even given. All of these have psycho-emotional effects on the babies as well. So just use natural ingredients. I could talk for ages about that, and avoid certain substances that are being put on it. The time after birth, we know since Bowlby is also a very important one, and faces and makes us react and reenact our way to challenges over and over again, the way we have been exposed to stress after birth. And so the main criteria for all of these and the greatest healing factors, because sometimes it can be overwhelming seeing all the things that happen to us or to our children, as it was for me at some point as well, is that we can heal it through love. The greatest healer and the greatest effect we see when healing all these birth complications is as much body contact and love as you can give them in the first year. And a beautiful professor, a friend of mine from the States, Professor Charlotte Peterson, she has done a wonderful book about this, and she could prove that the amount of body contact that you have in the first year determines our capacity for peace. She studied peaceful societies on our planet and did a beautiful, beautiful presentation on that. And the more these people, these babies were held in the arms of mother, father, neighbor, whatever, then the higher their oxytocin levels were. And we measured oxytocin in children all over the world, and we could find in the societies where the least contact is the least oxytocin in the first year, but also in the rest of their lives. Basically Russia and America, by the way. Yeah? So, if any interference with all these steps is there, then please get out and heal it. But mostly I would love all of this not to occur in the first place. But what I would like to do, I would like to use Elizabeth to make a little oxytocin release. Yeah? It's not, we don't have to make love in the version, which is basically the highest release of oxytocin in front of everybody, but we could use another technique. But if you want to stand up, I will show you a little exercise that we actually use in therapy for strengthening our self-confidence, our bonding capacity, to heal problems in a family, to make good family conferences, basically a good shot of oxytocin. So I'll put it aside, but basically what I do, I use the outside of my hands because it's very, very sensitive, and I'll just show you a little routine what you can do. And if you started getting tingly, then you know that you released a little bit of oxytocin, and we could actually prove that it increases the hormone of love 5 times. So whenever you're nervous or you see a partner getting nervous or stressed or angry, I don't know if he lets you stroke the other one, but just so split up in pairs and just follow it and see what you can feel.
Mm. Wow, this is good.
It is.
So you basically take your hands like this, and then just show you like that, and you stroke around the back like this.
Mm-hmm.
And then you go with your hands like that. So Elizabeth is already experiencing her first releases of oxytocin. So this is it. Yeah. So you do this 3 to 4 times, and you can swap over.
Wow.
And it's a technique developed by a friend of mine from France, Julie. And like I said, you could actually measure the increase of oxytocin in the system. Yeah? Okay. And I'd like to finish that if everybody just now in this oxytocin release,
Yes.
you can even make it in a row. We did it in circles. It's great. So what you could just do for a second, if you could just stand with this oxytocin release and just close your eyes just for a few seconds and start breathing deeply in and out. Become conscious where you are. Keep your eyes closed. And now just focus on your heart. And now just feel like through this little opening, through this little oxytocin that you just had, your heart is increasing in size. Bigger in your body, outside of your body, embracing your neighbor, embracing everybody in this room, embracing everybody at this festival, spreading around Portugal, and spreading around the earth. And just be connected with a widening heart to our planet. And just rest in a feeling of love. Thank you very much.